Welcome to the Project Closeout Report for the CA VCA Treasury for Rapid Funding. On the rest of the slides, some of the content is underlined, and any underlined content has a corresponding resource or link that you can check out in our Closeout Report. And we encourage you to do that so you can see the full scope of all the tools and resources that were created. A number of new tools were created and developed during this proposal's term. We also had maintenance proposals and groups created. Within the framework of the Treasury working group, there were multiple working groups and task forces formed with different purposes. Two of them are listed here. One is the VPA process working group, and then the Fund 10 Improvements Task Force was tasked with establishing the criteria for adding working groups that would be appropriate under the Treasury's mandate. All of this was documented, as you can see here, and you can find all of these in the links in our closing report. As far as the project KPIs, we ended up with 5 audited reports issued, that totaling 19,962 ADA for community contributors. We also had recurring community gatherings. This was events, workshops, workspaces, sessions, all fall under this categories. 5 unique claims were submitted. These were discussed, evaluated, and iterated in DWork. Each of these proposals had engagement of active voters involved in the disbursement validation, and the proposals each had between 8 to 14 active unique voters. There's an average of 10 on any given proposal. And finally, the average value of the settled claims against the Treasury, 3,992 ADA on average. These are some of our key achievements. The first is community engagement in self-governance. Second, surfacing coherent frameworks for credentials and organizational legitimacy. Finally, rewarding distributed contribution. Here are some of our key learnings. The trust over IP models expressed in the underlying infrastructure of this proposal were understandable, clear, and robust, at the cost of extra effort to effectively document the dynamic flow of value. With the intention of being able to support and govern a credential or DID issuance with transitive value, it was discovered that the robust documentation was critical for institutional validity, but that a different, more grassroots process needed to be in place to surface individual propriety and thus establish the legitimacy required of transitive trust. Learning 2. The need for change that led to the emergence of the Community Advisors Improvements Challenge setting in the first place found an outlet in the goals of the CA-VCA Treasury and allowed a normally nomadic group of contributors to establish a more consistent presence and collaborate to iterate experiments in change to decentralized or distributed ecosystems. This critical ingredient of combining governance and space in unique ways has gone on to inform organizational growth in other Cardano ecosystems. Learning 3. The role of constraint theory and of the critical role of assumptions in the spawning of ideas and emergence of value from projects such as this has been particularly enlightening. As a project that grew out of the distributed, autonomous principles behind the formation of the Catalyst Circle, it was heavily dependent on the leadership provided by the delegative authority of sociocratic circles. With the upheaval experienced by Catalyst Circle over the development lifespan of this project, there was a noticeable but hard to pinpoint governance and operations breakdown that could be stoically worked through, but which had lost a critical piece of creative authority and relevance. Recognizing this relationship and realizing how critical our assumption was that such structure would always be there to support the effort was essential to understanding the challenges we experienced. Learning 4. Likewise, the overall catalyst pivot that led to the Voices proposal, the introduction of RBAC for future role development, and the evolution of the accountability framework with its revamping of process around the community roles of reviewer and moderator, amounted to another unvalidated assumption in the execution of this project. Any role ownership and evolution must be tied by governance to the actual infrastructure of the ecosystem that harbors the role, and one must be cautious in establishing institutions before the infrastructure upon which the institution relies necessitates its development. This is a well-known phenomenon in other disciplines called unlearned structure, and it is complex polarity within knowledge network, whether at the individual PKM level or at the enterprise level KMS. In identifying this bottleneck in effectiveness and relevance opens up a way forward for organizations that may think that these types of dependencies are intractable problems without solutions, and gives us hope that nothing is intractable. The governance frameworks deployed for this instance can be further refined to describe a more composable pattern language rather than a monolithic framework that must be adopted whole cloth to be coherent. We look forward to seeing this happening across community groups, some of which are already taking action. While it is unfortunate that the role of community advisor was phased out of Catalyst, The experience and stories of those who held the role, supported each other in that role, and aspired to the highest potential of collaboration is still present and finding ways to survive the glacial cooling period in the lead up to Voices. We believe that these contributors will always find a way to provide value and will be the first to pick up shovels in any Catalyst iteration. And we are proud to have supported a moment of their shared history and growth together and to have helped them for a short time to think of and experience themselves as community.